are talking about the criminal horror movie Deviant Behaviour. This one is directed by Jacob Grimm. And this movie, I would say, you can compare to the Nicolas Cage movie 8mm, because it kind of has a similar kind of setup to that to a certain degree. But it is a kind of slasher film, more so than a kind of a gritty thriller or anything like that. So really what we have here, we have a couple of slashers, serial killers. The line is quite blurry with this one, kind of from real life types of serial killer to your kind of cinematic slasher. But anyway, we have this kind of like these two serial killers, and they kind of act like a married couple. There's a kind of regular looking guy who goes out and picks up women, and then he brings them home to his quote unquote wife, who is this hulking big guy who kind of like is all scarred up, but wears like a wig and kind of almost like a transvestite, and like a kind of almost like a doll mask sort of thing. But he kind of calls her, you know, the other one calls him honey and stuff like that, and treats him like a kind of like a wife. And they basically kill young girls. This honey kind of tortures and kills these young girls, and the other guy wants him to video it, and then he wants to jack off to it essentially. So we have a pretty kind of depraved modus operandi from these kind of two killers. And then our protagonist is this guy who is a private detective. You know, he's a hard-boiled PI because his shirt isn't ironed and he's obviously hard drinking. So, you know, he's a hard-boiled PI. Anyway, he's kind of been tasked to find one of these missing girls, which happens to be the sister of this guy. And he enlists the help of his prostitute friend to try and kind of help track down the kind of like the missing girl, and obviously comes in confrontation with these couple of serial killers. What will happen? You have to watch the movie to find out. So let's discuss what works first of all with this movie. So I have to say this is kind of almost a cross between a crime movie and a slasher film. So I feel it has a somewhat unique place in the genre, if that makes sense. And I feel it can almost you know, be appreciated by both kind of sets of community fans, if you know what I mean. This is a low budget movie, so don't be expecting anything to the kind of like the production level of the aforementioned 8mm, but it kind of plays more like a kind of a crime film than a slasher film. But there are obviously slasher elements here. Honey is a slasher, albeit, you know, one which is limited to kind of like staying in their house and is sort of fed victims by the other guy. So there's it's an interesting kind of and somewhat unique feel to it, I have to say. And I've got to say, obviously this kind of like this depraved kind of sexual angle that it has to it certainly makes it feel more a kind of a taboo film almost in a certain degree. I mean, you don't see anything too gratuitous on screen here, but it has that kind of like that extra element of kind of danger. Because, you know, you really feel that these two guys are properly demented, if that makes sense. So you kind of really kind of like feel that these are some sick puppies going on here. And you're just kind of like, because you kind of know this kind of like this deviant sort of behaviour, you know, has happened in the past. There are people like this. Unlike a kind of like your Jason Voorhees sort of style slasher movie, it has that, I don't know, that feeling of kind of like these things is a little bit more close to home, and therefore kind of makes you kind of feel a little bit more uneasy to a certain degree. So I have to give the you know, props to the movie for that. Honey himself or herself, whatever you want to kind of obviously this is a somewhat progressive horror movie in that respect. But I got to say that character looks cool. I mean, you don't really see a full shot of the kind of the scarred up face, but I think that works in its favour. You get enough. And the kind of the get up that they wear is weird and kind of like disturbing. And another thing that his character does, he kind of dances along to this kind of 70s sort of style music while you know, Reservoir Dog style, while he's kind of torturing his victims. And again, it adds this kind of like this element of uneasiness to the kind of the proceedings. It's not just kind of like, I'm so trying to look badass all the time and I kind of want to look really scary and stuff. He's kind of like dancing along while he's kind of torturing these kind of, without ever saying anything, while he's kind of torturing these people and stuff. And I think again it just adds this kind of like this unknown X factor to it. The movie is relatively well paced. I think it's, you know, it's not a long film, but I think because of that, it kind of runs at a kind of a good pace. I liked our protagonists are definitely flawed characters. Our PI is obviously this kind of screw-up ex-cop who's obviously got a drinking problem. He's a bit of an asshole even to the people who are kind of like trying to help him. And then this kind of prostitute also is a drug dealer. So even our kind of our quote-unquote good guys are actually kind of quite seedy people. And I really like the kind of the use of kind of the extras here. They've got some really kind of like weathered-looking extras, shall we say, that kind of adds to the kind of the gritty kind of feel of this movie. And I actually quite enjoyed the climax of the movie. Well, I enjoyed the last act. There is a stinger which I wish they hadn't done, but other than that, I enjoyed it. What doesn't work with this movie, like I said, this is a very low budget film, and the thing I feel is most noticeable about that is some of the poorer acting here. Sadly, the kind of the acting here from a lot of the cast, if not all, you know, not all maybe, but a lot, is on the poorer side. Unfortunately, this doesn't come across as particularly kind of believable acting. I have to say as well, considering our main protagonist is meant to be a private detective, we see little investigation here. The kind of like the revelation that he has to check this one particular clue is so ridiculously obvious, because it's literally the only clue that he's got. I think, hang on, I'll double check that one thing that I found out. So I felt there wasn't really a lot done with the kind of like the private eye angle, so it almost seemed somewhat superfluous. His kind of career choice seemed like he was this really great police officer when he was in the force, and now he's this well-regarded PI, but we don't really see any of that, to be honest with you. And like I've said, there is a stinger here which I feel that trope is overplayed now, to be honest with you. Oh my god, something else is going to happen, and it's going to, you know, fade to black as soon as we see something. It's a kind of horror movie trope that I feel there's enough of that now. We don't need to do that. We can just have an ending. We don't always need to kind of have this like, oh my god, ending all the time. It's cheap. Anyway, I gotta say, this is a very low budget film movie, but I really enjoyed the kind of the way this movie was told, and the kind of the way it has this kind of like real life kind of subtext, and it kind of is a slasher film, but at the same time it's a kind of crime drama at the same time. So it's a low budget affair, but I think it's worth a watch for the majority of people, unless you just don't like these kind of like low budget gonzo sort of style movies. 6 out of 10 for me. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I shall look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.